in order to comply with public health guidelines around social distancing. It will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Thanks very much for listening to that. If we can move on, have we got any apologies, substitutions, or declarations of interest?
Convener, the apologies have been submitted by Councillor Chris McElhaney to be substituted by Councillor Jim McElhaney. With your permission, we'll move to a roll call.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just got to
Convener, excuse me, I'd like to declare an interest, please.
Okay, right.
It's sorry about the delay. It's agenda item 16 as a board member of the ICDT.
Thank you, Ronnie. Chris, do you want to come in?
Yes, it's just I'll go for agenda item number 3 because there's a variety of capital projects that have an impact on Clyde Leisure. And I'm a board member on Clyde Leisure.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
And same with myself, Peter.
That's Jim Porter. Anyone else? No?
Okay.
Okay, we'll move to a roll call.
Could the following councillors please indicate if they're present at the meeting, either remotely or in person? Councillor Alfeld.
Present remotely.
Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Clockerty.
Remotely.
Councillor Crowder.
Remotely.
Councillor Curley.
In chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
Present remotely.
Councillor McKay.
Remotely.
Councillor McCormick.
Present.
Councillor J McElhaney.
Remotely.
Councillor McKenzie.
Remotely.
Councillor Nelson.
Remotely in municipal buildings.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, come back to the agenda. Agenda item number 2 is the Revenue and Capital Budget Period 9. Matt, talk us through it, Matt.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, happy to present this. This is the standard revenue and capital monitoring report. The main points are at 2.2, where it shows the revenues are currently as an overspend of £116,000. That's a slight increase from prior period, and officers continue to monitor this with a view to bring it down as best we can by the end of the year. The details are included at 2.3 and in the body of the report. I don't intend to go through them, but I'm happy to take any questions if needs be. 2.4 flags the capital position now at the moment. The capital, unfortunately, the subsidies increased to 2.679 million or 21%. That is up 6.8% from prior periods. The detail of the capital programme is obviously in the next item on the agenda, and we're happy to take some questions there. What we'd like to highlight at this point, though, is that we are continuing to see the after effects of the COVID pandemic and Brexit, and that's given us issues, particularly in the construction sector, to do with the construction supply chain, the material prices and labour availability. So that's a continuing knock-on effect we're aware of. Obviously that slippage is higher than we would hope, but I think there are continuing issues that will hopefully start to settle down in the near future. Unfortunately, I think we might have said that last year, but hopefully we're nearly out of the woods with that one. Happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, Matt, thanks very much. I don't see any questions in the chat. Is anybody got any questions?
Sure.
Sorry, Graham.
Yeah, with your permission, we'll try and squeeze a question here. There might be more relevant to item 5, it's not on the agenda, item 5.
Okay.
So page 14 of the papers, it talks about the road side trees having been a delay, and now we'll have suspended them due to the nesting season of birds. I just wonder if also can confirm what happens to dangerous trees in this situation. Will this have no implication on dangerous trees? Is this simply planned maintenance that's now stopped?
Okay, thanks, Graham. Matt?
To be honest, on trees, I think I would defer to Gail if you don't mind. Thank you, Convener.
Yes. Okay, Gail.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, convener. Thank you, councillor. If it was a dangerous tree, we would respond accordingly and we wouldn't wait. But when it's a planned activity, we do it in seasonal to reflect the sort of the wildlife implications.
Thanks very much, Convener.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Thanks, Cam. Okay, John Crowther.
Thank you, convener. There's a couple of small questions that relate to the appendices. And the first one is in Appendix 4, where it states that repaint and carry out essential repairs to the Comet. And it says that there's further feasibility studies being informed through the Comet Working Group. Is it envisaged that a paper will be prepared and submitted to councillors advising the outcome of these feasibility studies? And the second one relates to Appendix 7, that's the sea walls and retaining walls. And it's just to inquire whether that includes the stretch between Lamment's Pier and Kilburn Park beside the A8, which I understand that there may be a land ownership issue.
Okay, thanks, John. Stuart, you want to take the 2 points raised by John?
Through you, convener, with regards to Councillor Crowther's question about the Comet Working Group are looking at options currently, Councillor Crowther, which are looking at a number of different potential solutions. Ultimately, that will require to come back to the Environment Regeneration Committee. And I would defer to Mr Montgomery with regards to the seawalls.
Okay, Edith?
Yeah, through you, convener. If that's in relation to the stretch that takes in the boardwalk, that is an area we have surveyed, and we are currently engaged with legal and external legal searches just to conclude, the ownership position, and that's ongoing. It's not concluded as yet.
Eddie, Stuart, thank you both for your responses. Thank you.
Okay, John, thanks. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Recommendation 3.3, it says it is recommended by the committee that the committee notes the current position of the 21 to 24 capital programme and city deal. Looking through the papers, I don't see any commentary on the city deal, so I just wanted to know if that's buried within the appendices or it's just a bit of an oversight.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, through yourself, convener. Sorry, the city deal is certainly in the appendices to the capital programme, so the current projections are listed in there. The detail of the city deal, though, is more properly covered in the next item, so there should be, I think, some narrative in there regarding updating that. Yeah, there is.
Okay, Jim. Okay, next up, Ronnie. Ronnie.
Thanks, Michael. It's Appendix 5. Just a couple of questions. There's one on the first section on roads about feasibility studies, and I assume one of those studies will be the consultation on the one-way system on Cairn Drive in terms of making contact with the rest of Midton to find out how they felt about the whole thing. I know we were held up with COVID and so on, but I wondered if anyone can give us some kind of status update on that one. And in the second one, environmental services, the Nature Restoration Fund. maybe that's mentioned a wee bit later in the papers, and I've missed it. But I wonder if someone can give us a wee update on what that's all about. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Gail, would you want to take them questions from Ronnie, the one-way Cairn Drive and the Restoration Fund?
Yes, so in relation to Cairn Drive, we'll be carrying out consultation next financial year. In relation to that, there is a line for Cairn Drive in particular, and in relation to the Restoration Fund, that's contained within the next paper. But an update on that is that we have been looking to carry out works up at Clydemuir Park in relation to path improvements and planting of trees. This has been held up slightly by weather, but that is due to commence. But there is further detail in the next report.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Just Gail, I think I misheard the response to the first part of it. Did you say that the feasibility study regarding Cairn Drive would be implemented in the new financial year?
Yes, we'll be carrying out that feasibility study next year.
Okay, next financial year?
Yes, post sort of 1st of April onwards.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Stephen?
Yeah, it's just a comment. I mean, obviously we've taken the approach, our officers have taken the approach of combining the revenue and the capital financial reports together and having a separate progress report on the capital programme, which is the next item on the agenda. But I just have noticed that a number of members have been asking questions on the financial report, which can be answered in the content of the capital report. So it's maybe something that members, either officers or members, need to reflect on, or both.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Okay, no more questions. Can we agree the recommendation?
Great.
Great, okay, thank you. Item number 3, moving on from that, is the capital programme progress report. Eddie and Gail, who wants to come in first?
Through you, Convener, I'll come in first with a few brief updates. I mean, I won't go through every project, but I'll just provide an update where some of the text is maybe out of date and things have moved on. So on the Ivy House project, we now have a start date agreed as the 7th of March. On the seawalls item, touched on that earlier, but there is the specialist survey work at Great Waterfront is currently ongoing. And the Custom House Square cobbled roads item, the formal acceptance of the second phase is imminent, and that will deal with the area immediately in front of the Custom House between the building and the square. And on the community centre projects, work is currently on site at Weems Bay, and the Grieve Road work will commence on the 8th of March. So it's just a brief update on some of the text that's there and how it's moved on. And Gail, I don't know if you want to add anything from your side.
Thank you. I only have 2 updates in relation to 5.3 spaces for people. We have now received that monitoring results, and that's included in these papers in the addendum. And in relation to Drumshanty Road car park, following some feedback from residents, we have actually been in contact with the school to make them aware that Drumshanty Road car park is open and to encourage people to use it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jim McWhinney.
Thanks, Convener. The item I'm going to discuss isn't actually on the papers. It's going way back, probably during COVID. We had looked to install a facility to live stream from the crematorium. I'm just wanting the update on that. Is that now in place, and is that organised through the undertaker, etc., to pass on the link, etc., for extended family and members of the public who obviously can't make it in person? Because I've looked on the council website and I can't see any link or any indication as to how you would see that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is now in place. So what I'll do is I'll get a wee briefing for you, councillor, and circulate it around the committee.
That'd be helpful, Gail. Okay, Jim.
Well, I think it's not just the committee. I think it's the general public would be keen to get that promulgated or publicised as well.
Okay, Gail. Okay, we can do that. Okay, thanks, Jim. Okay, Graham.
Thanks very much. 2 questions then. 5.13, back actually pretty similar. We now see that the plan revision is in process, and the incoming electrical supply will be undertaken as a pre-contract work. Can we confirm that that incoming electrical supply will come in such a way it won't be a major disturbance to either Carter Hill Street or the operation of the supply? So how would it get extra electricity in, I suppose, is the question. And 5.16, nationalised seeding and planting commenced spring 2022. Where are we going to throw these seeds?
Yep.
So,
Gail.
Eddie might be best placed to do the cremator update, but I can come in the Nature Restoration Fund. In relation to the naturalised seeding and planting, we're identifying areas of biodiversity, so areas that will sort of have wildlife, bees and other insect populations. And we also are doing a piece of work up at Clydemere Shield Park as well.
Okay. Ed, did you want to come in the commission?
Through you, convener. The incoming electrical supply, the detail of that has obviously been dealt with through the kind of technical officers, and if I recall correctly, the location of that is relatively straightforward in terms of where it's coming from. Obviously, it will have to be coordinated in such a way that it is done over a period where the facility is not in use. So yes, it will be done to minimise any disruption. That goes for the whole project. Obviously, it's a complicated project, and we have to keep the facility operational as well at the same time.
Okay,
Can I just go back to Gail, please, Convener? So will members or constituents ever get a say or an understanding of where the seed is going to be? What do you want to use, Chris? Sowing. I said throwing. He said we're sowing seeds. I said we're throwing seed. Will that be just identified by officers and carried out, or will members and constituents ever get an understanding?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. I will ask the grounds manager to liaise with you direct in relation to the areas that we're looking at. These areas are areas where officers have identified that there's an opportunity to create biodiversity areas.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, Ronnie.
Thanks, Convener. Gail, you touched on 5.6 Drumshanty Road car park. I just wondered if we had any news about the double yellows that were going to be put down in the approach to it and after it, because that will in itself force people to use the car park. I have passed, in fact, I made a point of passing a few times in the last couple of weeks, and it's gradually filling up now. In fact, the nursery are using it all the time. But it would help a lot if we knew when the double yellows were going down.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. Officers are monitoring the use of the roads in the vicinity, so there are no double yellow lines planned currently. So that would have to be taken into account how the area is being used now that the car park is much more established, and to see how behaviours change.
Gail, sorry, I must have missed something then, because we had agreed previously that there would be double yellows going from the last tenement house, going towards the multi-use area. There would be a gap, and then there would be double yellows going down nearly as far as the bottom of Tower Drive. That was one of the original kind of agreements that we had. So are we saying now that we have to go back to the drawing board in terms of getting double yellows? Because the reason that it's uppermost in my mind is the fact that we had some feedback from the people who stayed in those houses, and it was basically, please don't have double yellows in front of my house because that's where I park my car. So I'm a wee bit confused, Gail, in terms of, is that not going to happen anymore? Are we going back to the drawing board, or where are we with that?
Yep, officers are monitoring sort of the behaviour in the area. If a traffic regulation order is required, we'll need to carry out consultation, and we'll need to ensure that all members of the public are able to respond to that. So that piece of work has not been carried out yet. We need to see how the behaviours, whether people use the car park, whether they continue to park in a way that could be considered inconsiderate or dangerous, and whether those WL lines are required, or whether those WL lines may be a restriction that's a time restriction, so that they're active during maybe school drop-off and pick-up, but that work needs to be undertaken.
Well, I can honestly say, Gail, I'm totally confused now, because I do remember we had reams of correspondence on this, in terms of why we wanted the car park in the first place. And it was because of the cars who were parking on the pavements all the way down from the tenement houses, more or less, to Tower Drive. And about, I don't know, at the moment, I think there are some who are still doing that. There's an argument that says that we wouldn't have been pushing so hard for the car park there. And we did have 5 different local organisations who asked us to try and get it. But we wouldn't have been pushing so hard if, in fact, there was no restrictions planned for the road. I mean, I think that's completely bizarre. You know, it just doesn't seem to add up. So the only thing I can think is that, you know, let me go back and look at the previous communication and correspondence that both myself and Lynn have on this, and we'll be in touch with you. Because, in fact, I think Gordon Leach actually met with us there to actually discuss what we wanted. So I'm really confused with that one, Gil. But rather than hold things up, I will come back to you maybe tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Drew?
Thanks, convener. Item 6.5, the town and village centre place-based funding. There's 3 items there that are listed against Port Glasgow Town Centre regards funding. One of these particularly, the Port Glasgow Princes Street canopy improvements, £31,000 has been allocated beside it. Now, the canopy improvements, I think, if I'm not mistaken, are to clean the canopy, because a lot of empty shops within that parade who are not contributing, the canopy is filthy. And there's also sections where the glass is missing. That will not come to £31,000, absolutely not. What my question is that, can it be assumed that the surplus from this, the money that's left over, assuming that it doesn't come anywhere near 31,000, that money will remain within the fund for general use within Port Glasgow Town Centre to be decided by the Port Glasgow Regeneration Forum? Thanks.
Joe?
Through you, convener, Councillor Mackenzie is absolutely correct that £31,000 is not for the replacement and initial clean. It is to facilitate an ongoing maintenance regime over a period of 2 years.
Okay, Drew?
Yeah, that's fine, Michael. Thank you. Although I don't think it'll come anywhere near 31,000, but thank you.
Okay, thanks. Chris, do you want to add?
Yeah, thank you. We've got a couple of minor points. I suppose just touching upon that one, 31,000. This funding is obviously, a lot of these are in private ownership. These shops. I'm just wondering, in Port Glasgow, is a contribution also being received from the shop owners, and that is obviously proven canopy improves their business. I would also just a comment on 5.1, cycling, walking, and safer streets. Just with respect to, I think the last meeting, I think it was reported that there should be plans made available to the ward councillors on these 2 projects. Just want to get a touch base where that is, and just I suppose just a small comment on the rewilding, the nature restoration fund. I think it's a great opportunity to get improved biodiversity and around some of the land that we own as Implied Council. And I think certainly there's a few places in my ward I think I'd like to maybe put forward. I think I've suggested in the past officers, and certainly would like to meet up again just to show where there could be opportunities within my ward to provide that sort of biodiversity. Thank you. Anyway.
Is that you, Chris? Yeah?
That's me.
Yeah. Okay. So, canopy, should you want to answer the canopy question, then maybe Gil can take up the cycling, safer walking streets.
Through you, convener. The canopy, Councillor Curley, was installed by Riverside and Clyde. There had been a hope that there would be ownership taken by the shops in the area. Unfortunately, that's not been forthcoming. The maintenance regime for it hasn't been forthcoming either. The damage has not been carried out by the shop owners. It's been as a result of vehicles reversing or turning corners, clipping the canopy and then causing damage. I think it's appropriate for this to happen. The impact on the town centre is quite significant, whereby we have installed something for the benefit of the town centre, and it's looking really quite sad. So that's why there's the recommendation for the investment that's in the papers before you.
Gail, do you want to come in the cycling, safer walking streets question?
Yes, officers are doing some work on this and look to share this hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Just to come back on the point about it's a Legacy Riverside Implied project. I think obviously we've maybe learned lessons in a few of these projects. That maybe you get the legal nicety sorted out beforehand, because obviously we don't have the situation where when maintaining somebody else's, or when putting property on somebody else's buildings and maintaining them, albeit how nice it looks. But we just need to make sure we get feed-in from local businesses if we do that kind of thing in the future.
So, unsurprisingly, Drew McKenzie wants to come back in.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I could declare an interest here. Of course, the fact that my own shop is one of those concerned here. And as far as paying a contribution, there would be absolutely no problem from our point of view to do that. The issue is that there's so many empty shops now in the parade, and obviously there would be no contribution, and these shops would not try to get this canopy cleaned. And the trouble is that the folk that do it, and it needs cherry pickers, and it needs a whole job. These people will only come, these window cleaners will only come and do the whole parade for the cost of the whole thing. They'll not go to one shop or two shops and just do a section. They need to do the whole thing. Therefore, it's right that the council should get in there and organise it, do a clerk of works, and if they find it appropriate to charge the various shops along the way, then I certainly wouldn't have any problem with it. I don't think any of the ones that are occupied would be, but some sort of system's got to be, and as Mr. Jimison says, it does make the place look very, very untidy. Thanks.
Okay, Drew, thanks very much. Anyone else? No? Can we agree with that recommendation? Sorry? Oh, sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Apologies for the spelling in the chat as well. Could I suggest that officers prepare a detailed report for the next meeting of the Port Glasgow Regeneration Forum on the sort of ownership issues at this particular location and the implications for the council are doing this? Because I don't think this is necessarily the correct forum to have that the discussion on, but I think it would be useful for us to understand who actually owns all the shops and essentially factors the shops, etc. as well, and where the liabilities lie. So I think that's better discussed at the Regeneration Forum. It may require a further report back here, but I think it's better discussed at the Regeneration Forum in the first instance.
Okay, we can do that, sure. Yeah. Okay, right. Thanks, Stephen. Can we agree with recommendations? Yeah. Thanks very much. Okay, item number 4 is the general update report. Stuart, can you take this?
Convener, through you. My general update report covers 5 areas: car parking, speed surveys, Freeports, the Falls of Clyde and the Edinburgh process. In March 2020, the Council commenced consultation on a traffic regulation order for car parking charges at 4th Street and Shore Street in Port Glasgow and Kempock Street in Gourock. The TRO was made in January 22 with an effective date of the 1st of April 2022. Convener, car parking charges are due to commence on the 1st of April 2022 following a period of suspension due to COVID. Since writing this report, I'm aware of additional funding allocation from the Scottish Government, and following that consideration at the forthcoming Policy and Resources Committee, the reintroduction of car parking charges may be delayed for a period of a further 6 months. However, it stands that car parking charges are due to recommence on the 1st of April as per the report, unless that's superseded by a Policy and Resources decision. Following the January committee, officers were asked to provide survey information on vehicle speeds at Albert Road, Ashton Road and Clock Road in All Gourock. Paragraph 4.5 sets out the survey information. The road service have raised these locations for consideration for safety cameras. However, the locations have not been supported. New camera locations are being introduced at Dubs Road, Regent Street, and a mobile camera will operate on the Clune Brae. Discussions have been ongoing between UK and Scottish governments regarding the introduction of Freeports and Greenports in Scotland. Glasgow City Council submitted an expression of interest for one involving Clyde Operations Limited, Glasgow Airport and PV Stirling, along with the associated member authorities, for a tri-modal 4-port bid, namely sea, rail and air, involving Greenock Ocean Terminal, KG5 in Glasgow, along with Glasgow Airport and the railhead at Bells Hill. The prospectus is due to be issued sometime in March, Convener, and clearly we're seeking authority or seeking the committee to note that we continue to have an involvement in it. The meeting took place with officers and a member in respect of the Falls of Clyde before Christmas. We have continued to show support for the Falls of Clyde proposals. However, we do require an up-to-date business plan and positive engagement with the planners in respect of the container village which is being proposed by the Falls of Clyde, Unfortunately, to date, neither have been forthcoming. In December 21, the Minister for Environment, Land Reform, along with the Minister for Green Skills, Circular Economy and Biodiversity, wrote to local authorities seeking a whole of government approach in respect of biodiversity and nature. Officers will evaluate the implications of this request, and once we've had full engagement with the environmental subgroup within the Alliance, we'll prepare a further report to this committee. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Jim.
Thanks, convener. Paragraphs 4.4 to 4.8 on the speed surveys. It's my colleague, Councillor Chris McAlaney, that instigated this. He's been quite active campaign on this particular issue, and I'm sure Councillor Alfield and Councillor Quinn will have been similar views and representations from their constituents on this matter. That said, it's disappointing to note the Strathclyde Safety Partnership response to say that there's no action at this particular time, particularly when 85% of the drivers are speeding and at the Clock Road point at excessive speeds. This doesn't, of course, shows that the cars that anecdotally are driving at 50 and 60 miles per hour. So that said, I'm requesting you as the convener of this committee, Michael, that you to write to the Strathclyde, sorry, the Safety Camera Partnership Team, Police Scotland, and ask them for the rationale as to why they've deemed that the cameras are not suitable for this particular location. You could oblige me on that, Michael, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Gail, do you want to just go through the kind of process and the decision-making aspect of what happens in a case like this, please?
Yes, thank you, convener. Thank you, councillor. Yes, Safety Camera Partnership is an independent body, and they will look at a number of areas of criteria. So they will look at the speed measures, they will look at the type of road it is, they will look at number of incidents, number of accidents, and reports from colleagues within the police traffic team. And each year they will look and prioritise locations, and then they inform the local authorities of the successful locations, which we have done this year. During that period, we will continue to, if there's areas we're aware of, we will make sure that we are making them aware of areas that we wish them to consider, which they do, and these locations were raised to that group and asked for them to consider. However, when they've looked at the criteria, they have not been included within the prioritised list. So it's an independent body that makes the decision in relation to where they will prioritise for the year ahead.
Okay, if we did request some type of action on that road, would it mean losing one of the cameras that we're getting at Regent Street or one of the other locations?
Because the partnership have a priority list, they would not look to replace one of those because those have been identified as key locations that they feel that they need a safety camera because of potentially incidents or the speed that they are reporting. So I don't believe that they would replace, but they would, if they were going to consider, which they have done, but if we were asking them to consider again, I believe it would be an additional or a mobile camera that they would potentially locate in an additional location.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Gail. What you've just, with all due respect, you've identified what your perception of the process and how they have came to that particular decision. But what I'm asking for is for Michael to write and to ask them to explain as to the rationale as to how they've came to that decision, which basically is maybe identifying what you're saying, but have that down in writing to allow the ward councillors to feed back to their concerned constituents.
Okay, I've not got a problem doing that.
Convener, could I come in on this particular item?
Yes, David, come.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I'm not so sure whether it's appropriate for something like this, of this nature, for the convener to be doing the writing. I think we could trust our officers to be doing the writing. But we've obviously got this information back before us because there's been a specific request from a member about this survey. But in terms of my understanding, there's been traffic surveys carried out across the area. I mean, I've seen them in Kilmacombe, I've seen them in Port Glasgow, my own ward, and I'm not so sure that taking this one in isolation is the best way to sort of look at the issue of where they've got speeding problems around the area. So I'd have thought that there might actually be other areas where the figures are showing that there's more of an issue with speeding than at this particular location. So I think if we're going to look at speeding as an issue and whether we should be pressing for speed cameras or even other measures, and we've got a policy obviously around other measures as well, then we should be looking at things in the round. But just to ask the question, I suppose, on what the figures are actually telling us. Jim said that 85% of people are speeding, basically, at these locations. So I would just like to understand what 85% tile speed actually means in practice. So maybe Gail could explain actually in layperson's terms what that actually means.
Gail?
Yes, thank you, convener. Thank you, councillor. Yes, when we look at averages, but we also look at the top and the bottom speed. So the 85 percentile is if you've got the very slowest and the very fastest, and the 85 percentile is the 15% of the very fastest, if that makes sense. It's quite difficult. I'm happy to sort of put that into more of a briefing note, if that helps, but that's the sort of the quick version of what it is. And we use that 85 percentile, that is general guidance across the industry, to use that figure for assessment of what potential traffic calming measures may be required, or what that sort of behaviour is like at that location.
So does it mean 85% of people are speeding?
No.
No, it doesn't. It means that the potential top speed, if you take out, it's to try and take out where you may get outliers, or where the machine may have reported it wrong. You know, there may be something wrong with the calibration. So you may start getting sort of outliers that are very high or very low, that potentially are skewing what an average may be.
Okay, thanks, Gail. John Crowther, do you want to come in?
Thank you, convener. It's just to raise a couple of issues regarding the Falls of Clyde, and as everyone is aware, the Falls of Clyde International, their proposal to bring the old lady back to the river of her birth really is to find a function for the ship that means that she would be self-sustaining and would not rely on the public purse to support her return to Scotland. The proposals and functions that she would perform are based on examples from around the global maritime sector: education at sea, carrying fair trade cargo, personal sail training, the ocean waste collection, recycling. I could go on. But the Falls of Clyde International, they claim that they've all been costed to allow the ship to support herself while offering a carbon-free vessel fitted with the latest technologies. However, these aims are achieved by the Falls of Clyde International require the assistance of Inverclyde Council and Clyde Operations Limited in order to secure a berth for this vessel. Today, the Falls of Clyde International have not approached Inverclyde Council for any financial assistance, only for an endorsement of the project and assistance to secure a berth. I am sure that there have been many occasions where the issue of a tall ship or historical ship when berthed at Greenock has been discussed at the council chambers. The most recent that I'm aware of is the Queen Elizabeth II, and I understand that HMS Onyx, which was an Oberon class submarine, was also discussed. Then we could add to that the financial assistance that was given to the Friends of the TS Queen Mary, a vessel that's now berthed in Glasgow and not at Greenock. The difference between the aforementioned vessels in the Falls of Clyde is that the Queen Elizabeth II and the HMS Onyx, along with the TS Queen Mary, were all to be static vessels, where the Falls of Clyde would be a working vessel. The TS Queen Mary is berthed at Glasgow, the Queen Elizabeth II in Dubai, and HMS Onyx was scrapped at Rosneath in the Gairloch. And if the will of the Inverclyde councillors is for an historic vessel to be associated with Greenock and Inverclyde, then surely the Port Glasgow built Falls of Clyde may be the last opportunity to do so. Do we take this opportunity to support the aims and objectives of the Falls of Clyde International and openly endorse them, or do we forevermore turn our back on the maritime history of Inverclyde? I would therefore urge the councillors to support the return of the Falls of Clyde and for officers to be instructed to engage in further negotiations with the Falls of Clyde in order that we can resolve the two issues as outlined in 4.12. I think during Stuart's introduction on that he seemed to be of the opinion that he would like these issues resolved. If that is the case, then I would commend that. Thank you.
Stuart, would you like to comment on John's?
Through you, Convener. Inverclyde Council has continually indicated its support towards the Falls of Clyde, Convener. Councillor Crowther is absolutely correct that Mr O'Neill suggests that once the ship has been refitted, it could be self-sustaining. However, Convener, there is a significant gap in the funding that currently exists between getting the ship from Honolulu to the point where it's able to earn income, as Councillor Crowther has indicated. You'll understand that the council endorsing that does have a risk associated with it, and it's for that reason that we've asked for an up-to-date business plan from the Falls of Clyde International in order that I can present a report to this committee with officers' support and recommendations that the council enters into that support. We are hopeful that Mr O'Neill can come to us with a up-to-date business plan, because the gap which he indicated to us before Christmas was in the millions of pounds, and it was significant millions of pounds in his business plan, and it's for that reason that we want to understand his business plan. We would hope that he would be able to engage positively with the planners in respect of his container village that's identified in his pre-application consultation. He gave us an undertaking before Christmas that he would positively engage with planners, but unfortunately that has not been forthcoming, Councillor Crowther.
Okay, that's fine. That's lovely, Stuart. Thank you.
Okay, John. Thank you. Ronnie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Just a quick tuppence worth on the speeding that Jim mentioned earlier. I guess I'm maybe closer to this than anyone else, given that I live in Albert Road. But I'm with Jim. I would like to have a kind of better understanding of what we're being told here, because it's not really that clear to me. What I do know is that certainly the speeding is more or less confined to specific times. It's basically early morning and late evening. So I would be really keen to find out a wee bit more about when it was carried out, how we did it, and basically some more detail. The other aspect of it, Michael, is that I was a wee bit intrigued as to why Lower Kemphock Street and Upper Kemphock Street were not included in this, because the feedback that we get is that it's a racetrack from the early hours of the morning. People are just going round and round in circles, racing each other. So I was really intrigued to know why that wasn't on this particular study. Maybe there'll be a pretty straightforward reason for that, but I was interested in it. And just one final point, if you don't mind, Michael, and it is that I read last night's report about it. Actually, the photograph was taken more or less outside my house. By the way, I should maybe have jumped out the window and joined it. But at the end of the day, it said that the gate to the play park was actually dangerous because it led onto the pavement and the road. It doesn't. The gate basically backs onto the prom, and the only kind of danger you would have there is getting knocked down by cyclists. Sorry about that, Chris. So basically, I would really, I'll support Jim. I would like to get more information on it, Gail. Thanks, mate.
Okay. Gail, can you come back to Jim and Ronnie with more information as to how they arrive, the decisions that they do, I mean, as I say, I've got roads in my own ward where I can be shouting from the same hymn book, you know. So I don't think it's maybe appropriate to focus on one location as we're being asked at the moment. But it might be something if we can maybe get some more information as to how they arrived, the decision that they do arrive at. Jim, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Well, due respect, I fully understand what Stephen says, that there's speed surveys gets done throughout the district. These figures are then analysed internally by our roads department team, and Gail eloquently spoke about the various criterias, accidents, near misses, all the types of road, etc., which then forms them an opinion as to where it sits on our internal priority list as to where action needs to be done or no action required at this particular time. However, the report clearly says that the speed survey that we undertook was done in November, right? It was from that our officers then decided to write to the safety partnership team with a request to look at putting speed cameras in. That's the difference between all the other stuff in the book. We've now moved it to the next stage because 85%, yeah, I get there's a bit of kind of, does that actually mean? I don't know, does it mean 15% are speeding way well above that? By the by, we asked for the safety partnership to look at putting cameras into this particular location. They've come back and said, the report says, that have not been identified for the sighting of safety cameras. All I'm requesting is for you, whether it be Stuart, Gail, or yourself, convener, to write to the safety partnership. Please, can you explain your rationale as to here was the findings that we had produced from the safety survey. Why do you think that it's not suitable then for putting speed cameras in it? That's the request, and my request still stands, convener.
Okay. Gail, could you put a list together in that regard?
Yes, convener, yes, councillor. I'm happy to put together a briefing note that sets out what the 85 percentile means in better writing, better sort of wording, and also to request further information on the criteria from the Road Safety Camera Partnership, who have provided us with a note of the criteria. But I can ask for a bit more detail on that criteria and circulate that round members if that would be useful.
Yeah, that would be helpful. That'd be helpful. Okay, thank you. Graham.
Thanks very much. I believe I was at 4.8, but it's not one. I don't want more cameras in my ward. I want to thank the officers in the Safety Camera Partnership for bringing another 3 cameras, safety cameras, not speed cameras, safety cameras to Clyde. Obviously, speeding is an issue throughout the district, and even though the 3 cameras are in my ward, it was just to say it's a very positive thing that we've got another 3 cameras from the partnership. A question that constituency has asked that maybe Gail could answer: where does the money go that they get from these speed cameras? I believe it's not in the intention against the money, but just to hear it from Gail so that I can pass the information on to my constituents.
Okay. Gail?
Thank you, convener. Thank you, councillor. It's a Police Scotland camera. We do not have any sort of access or input or liaison with that camera at all. Everything is purely for in relation to Police Scotland. So any income would go to Police Scotland. It's a enforcement of a movement order. So Police Scotland are the only people that can enforce a movement order.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Gail. Okay, Chris, and then Stephen. Chris.
Thank you. Just about 3 points, if I just throw them into one, if that's okay, convener. Just with respect to calls applied, I thank officers for arranging a meeting with the organisation represented David and Neil before Christmas. I think it was quite a positive meeting, and obviously what the outcome of that meeting was we've actually provided some information to David to help him and his campaign to get false flight to the river. Obviously, there's other things we need to go on and other things we need to develop. So I'm glad to see that the officers are continuing to offer to positively engage with the campaign moving forward. On item 4.2, with respect to the change in effective date, we've got effective date of the 1st of April 2022 for implementation of the charging the car parks and TRO. I'm just conscious of the fact that Mr Jameson said that there's going to be maybe additional funding from the Scottish Government, which is welcome, these sort of things, which may put it back another 6 months. I'm just wondering how we actually then do the communication to our constituents about this, because obviously we want to make sure there's clear communication if there is a change, and if there's not, if things get moved back. On just a point of interest, I suppose, really, and 4.5 also has been identified as speed, and a number of members have mentioned the fact that we can't take the case in isolation, which I completely agree with. We need to look at these things in a whole. I was just wondering if officers have an idea where this road fits in within the overall ranking within Inverclyde for traffic calming measures, and how it fits in with ones that have already been identified. That might give a little bit of consistency. I don't want to get overloaded officers with additional reports, but just whether or not they had that information to hand. And just on 4.7, there's a statement here that on A and B class roads, vertical horizontal features are not appropriate. I'm just thinking back to Dunlop Street. That's a B classification road, and we put horizontal features on the road to try and control speed. I'm just wondering whether or not officers could comment on that, and whether that might be something that they may be able to consider in the future with respect to the road in Europe.
Okay, Gail, do you want to sort of Stu, my plan first, Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Councillor Curley, in respect of the potential decision by the Policy and Resources Committee, it would then follow the Policy and Resources Committee, and then that would be communicated via corporate comms, and also there would be information on the ticket machines to ensure that people couldn't put money into them. And I'm happy to be answering the Gail on all of that.
Gail?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the speed surveys, they are actually still in progress for this year. So we carry out speed surveys in a number of locations, and that will shape what that priority list looks like. So that's still underway. There's a number that are being undertaken right up to May. So we won't be assessing that until during the summer period. And then at that point, we'll be able to come back to committee with that priority list. And in relation to A and B class roads, the type of road is determined by maybe the location of the road, the type of traffic it is, whether there's buses, and there'll be a number of criteria included within that. In relation, this is a general comment in relation to A and B class roads. Because of the nature of those roads, it's not usually appropriate. But what we quite often do in those sort of roads in which officers are going to look at for this location is looking at gateway features and lining and signing, and whether the appropriate location that can act to change driver behaviour by changing their perception of the type of location they're in.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So it's a general rule as opposed to an absolute rule for A and B class roads. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Stephen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just want to come in on the falls at Clyde and obviously hear what John said and Chris has said, and I certainly I'm generally supportive of what's being proposed, and would certainly like to see some sort of heritage feature in Greenock around the harbours. But I don't think what officers have asked of Mr. O'Neill is particularly unusual or challenging, to be perfectly honest. I'm disappointed with some of the public criticism that he has made of council officers. I don't think that's necessarily the best way to sort of develop a constructive partnership. So hopefully going forward, can certainly work better together and try to deal with these type of issues. I'm certainly happy to meet with Mr. O'Neill myself, and I know you would be happy to meet with Mr. O'Neill as well, convener. So hopefully they will come back and provide the information that officers are looking for, and we can move things forward.
Yeah, I believe an invitation's already been sent, so there's no, I've got a problem with that. That would be a good idea. Okay, can we agree the recommendations on the report? Okay. Item 5 is the Roads and Transportation Proposed Ramp Stroke Capital Programme for 22-23. Gail?
Thank you, Convener. This report is the annual report that's brought to committee for members to consider the proposed projects for the year ahead. The financial details contained within 5.5 and the project breakdowns contained in 6 for carriageway resurfacing projects and 7 for footway schemes. It should be noted that an allowance of 150,000 has been allocated to participatory budgeting, and the communities team are currently consulting the communities on potential projects. The list chosen by the communities will be brought to this committee for noting once that's carried out. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Can we agree recommendations? Comments? Oh, Ronnie, okay. Thought we could agree with that there, Ronnie. Ronnie?
It's very quick and it's not a big one. Very welcome this report, Gail. I got a note from a constituent about a specific area or a specific road that he wanted to draw to my attention regarding some road problem, and I think there was a problem about a wall as well. So I'd like to drop you a wee note maybe tomorrow or Monday just to draw that to your attention and see what you think about it, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Chris?
Thank you. Just on this, I'm just noting on page 37, we've got the names footway surfacing schemes reserved, and we've also got some reserve schemes for main carriageway reconstruction. At the agreed budget, we've also assigned a number for budgeting really for constituents to choose or vote for schemes possibly. I just want confirmation that these are the sort of schemes that they would be voting for. The other thing is with respect to on page 38, structure schemes reserved is the Lindock Street scheme, which is design, construction, replacement and culvert on eastern lines of Falls. Just wonder if officers could give a wee what actually that structure is. Visiting site there, I know there is an old structure there that's actually leaking. I'm just wondering if that's the same one. And that's it.
Gail?
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. In relation to Lindock Street, Gordon would be best to advise. I believe that it is an existing structure that's got some issues, and it's to do repair works to that, well, replacement works to that, because they've been identified and is under inspection. But I will come back to you on the exact structure it is. And in relation to the reserve schemes, the reserve schemes are identified for if there's any issues in relation to the programme schemes due to potentially utilities come in and we need to reprogram works, or whether some of the projects come in less than previously estimated and there remains some budget at the end of the financial year. If that's the case, the reserve schemes are brought forward and delivered within next financial year. But we would make members aware of any of those projects that are likely to be affected in that way at the appropriate time.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Stuart, you want one?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Councillor Curley, the participatory budgeting list has been presented to committee previously. You'll see from item 6 on 6.1 item 6 that there's an allocation of £150,000 there against the participatory budgeting process, and it would be officers' intention to bring a report back following the conclusion of the participatory budgeting process to allow members to see where that allocation has been made in order for the committee to endorse that.
Okay, thank you. But with respect to the actual schemes that's going out in participatory budgeting, would it be fair to say that the schemes that are actually lighted here as possible reserve schemes would maybe schemes that have been given to our constituents to maybe choose, or are they completely different schemes?
Through you, Convener, I'll see Gail's comment on that.
Yes, the schemes that have been taken to the community are schemes that would be our reserve projects. They are schemes that have been identified not as the priority schemes that must be delivered due to safety concerns, condition of the road, things like that, but they would have been the next ones that would be delivered. and due to the fact that the community are choosing between footway and carriageway schemes, there's different costs estimated against those schemes. So it'll be up to the community to choose whether how many or how few schemes they choose. And so we are not aware of that at this time, but we will be bringing that back in the report as Stuart advised.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Green. I mean, I don't know if there's a wee bit of confusion here in terms of the participatory budget. And so originally £150,000 was set aside. As part of the budget process, we've augmented that to allow more of the schemes that are being surveyed to go ahead. And I certainly know that I know what the schemes we've consulted on because I've voted in the participatory budget and exercise as well. So hopefully that'll be brought forward in due course. So my questions, I suppose, are around sort of, and this is very welcome investment, obviously, but we know that there's loads and loads of roads out there that do need addressed. And I've asked Gail previously about when we're going to bring forward, given the ramps coming to an end, a revised ramp, so it would be useful to get a sort of timescale on that. But the question is really also around, we set a 3-year capital budget last week, and this is obviously a 1-year programme for 22-23, and given the sort of issues that were highlighted earlier in the agenda around slippage in the capital programme and the challenges around construction, and I'm not as confident that we're going to be overcoming them at any time soon, given the fact that there's a war going on in Europe at the moment, which could continue for quite some time, and the economic fallout from that. It's just, is there the capacity to accelerate the work that we're doing in roads, not just to fill the slippage in the programme, but given that we've set a 3-year capital funding, there's no reason why you couldn't bring funding forward from year 2 and year 3 to accelerate the programme. So is that something that officers could look at?
Bill?
Thank you, Councillor. As part of our capital monitoring reports, we do look at whether there's the opportunity to bring forward schemes. Currently, due to the fact that we're still working under social distancing, we're fully committed with what projects we can bring forward currently. As the social distancing changes, we will continue to reflect on that and see if there is the opportunity. But at this point, we are fully committed with the projects that we have programmed for delivery.
Okay, just to follow that up, Convener, I suppose in terms of the balance between what work we carry out in-house and what work we put out to external contractors, we obviously want to maintain work for our in-house team as well, but is there a capacity to augment, or is there the opportunity to augment our capacity by using colleagues in the roads partnership that we're in with, or external contractors?
Yeah.
Yes, no, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Convener. Yes, we do put out some pieces of work, and we have been doing that this year. We actually looked to put out a number of footways, but weren't successful. The market currently is very busy, and there isn't a number of contractors that are waiting to come and do work for local authorities. So we continue to look at the best way that we can deliver projects, and to look at whether there's the opportunity to do to bring forward work and bring a contractor on board. And we actually do have a contractor that's doing the car park at Jamaica Street. However, they have delayed the commencement because they're struggling with their resources. So what we are experiencing in the local authority in the way of social distancing, and how that gives some delay and to the efficiency of how quickly we can deliver works, that's been seen nationally and in the private sector as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Gail. That's helpful to understand the challenges you're facing.
Okay, Gail, thank you. Okay, don't see anyone else can agree with recommendations. Great. Okay. Item 6 is the residual waste procurement strategy. Gail, you're busy tonight, Gail.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, this report sets out a request to commence market testing. Members will be aware that in December 25, the Landfill Tax Ban comes into being, and that means that all local authorities need to dispose of their residual waste in a compliant manner. So previously we have been out to the market and we were not successful in that procurement exercise. So officers are looking for approval to carry out market testing and look at what the feedback is from contractors and suppliers that are in the marketplace, both looking at a single council tender, but also comparing that to if we go out to a tender exercise as a collaborative procurement exercise. And we will bring the outcome from that exercise to committee for consideration.
Okay. Can we agree recommendations? Agreed?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Item number 7 is the consultation and draft national planning framework for NPF4. Can we agree recommendations? Yes.
There's no football today.
And item number 8 is the consultation on local development planning regulations and guidance. Agree recommendations? Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 9 is the Fraser Valander Institute report on depopulation in Inverclyde, Argyll and Bute, and West Dunbartonshire. Stuart.
Through you, Convener. This report provides a synopsis of the findings from the Fraser Valander Institute in respect of the work that we've been doing to support economic recovery in Inverclyde, West Dunbartonshire, and Argyll and Bute. The final report is not with us, Convener. However, we would like to be able to use the Fraser Valander Institute full report in discussions with Scottish and UK governments in respect of potential task force for Inverclyde, and the committee's requested to support that recommendation.
Okay, any questions for Stuart? No? Do you agree recommendations? Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay.
Michael?
Yeah, sorry. Jim?
No, sorry, I just seen Stephen had his hand up.
Stephen.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's just to say that I fully support of that request. That did have a meeting recently with Angus Robertson, MSP, the Cabinet Secretary, who's got responsibility for the national population strategy, and that was along with the leaders of other West Coast councils, because we've been trying to make a special case for the West Coast because of depopulation. So at that meeting, certainly the government were very interested in seeing the Fraser Valander Institute report. So I think it's important that we do share it with them, and hopefully it'll help us make the case for both special action for Inverclyde, but also more generally for the West Coast of Scotland as well, and our partner councils.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Okay, can we agree that? Yep. Okay, thanks. Okay, item number 10 is the pavement parking prohibition consultation on pre-implementation directions and regulations. Gail?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, this report sets out our proposed response to Transport Scotland in relation to pavement parking and the introduction of new legislation to allow local authorities to enforce pavement parking. Guidance is not yet available, but is expected later this year, and implementation is expected in 2023. The response has been formulated by colleagues within the road service, but also in the legal team as well. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Any questions, Chris?
It's just one on page 98, 4.2. It talks about the enforcement of this. It says, however, practical local authorities use these powers and necessary for legislation to address the enforcement power to remain with Police Scotland. I'm just wondering, is there an option for their enforcement powers to remain with Police Scotland, or is it as part of the Act when the secondary legislation is made that they will come to the Council?
Gail?
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Councillor. No, enforcement powers will sit with the local authorities following introduction of the Act. In relation to the enforcement powers that currently are with Police Scotland, it relates more in relation to obstructive and unsafe parking rather than pavement parking per se. So it's slightly different what the new Act is bringing into legislation.
Just yeah, so the actual police responsibilities and enforcement will stay the same following the Act. There will be additional enforcement on behalf of the councils with respect to the pavement parking.
Yes, Police Scotland, even though we have decriminalised parking enforcement in relation to other restrictions, Police Scotland retain the responsibility to enforce obstructive and unsafe parking, and that will remain the case moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Yeah. Thanks, just page 124, it's asking about who should be consulted to go forwards. And I just wonder, I've got 4 railway stations in my constituency, and especially at Port Matilda, we have lots of, in my opinion, parking on pavement challenges. But it's interesting that British Transport Police having list off the number of people who should be consulted. So I wonder if officers would suggest we should add British Transport Police should be consulted and give that information to the Scottish Government.
Yep.
Yes, happy to do so. We actually attend a pavement parking group, so that's probably the appropriate route to feed back that information.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Stephen?
Yeah, there's probably an expectation on the part of the general public that essentially parking on the pavement's going to be banned, but clearly there is provision to allow for exemptions to be made in cases for exemptions. Just to ask you, how widespread do you think the exemptions are likely to be in a place like Inverclyde?
It's difficult to know exactly at the moment because we haven't received that guidance, and the guidance will set out what the minimum width of the footway should be. It will also set out location-specific survey criteria, and that survey information will set out where a road is appropriate to still facilitate pavement parking, and that may be because of the type of road it is, the type of traffic that use that road, the fact that you can park on a pavement but still allows appropriate distance, and that's the only way that potentially you can have emergency access. So there'll be a lot of different criteria included in that guidance note, and until we see the detail of that, we won't be able to assess locations within Inverclyde and get a feeling for how many roads are contained within that exemption.
Presumably, once you get that guidance, that there's going to be a big exercise to sort of carry out that assessment. So, I mean, is it going to be possible to have that all done in time for, I suppose, the enforcement of the Act to coming into place?
I would suggest that it depends when we get the guidance. We've been expecting the guidance for some time, and the guidance has been delayed, but the implementation date's been delayed as well. So when we receive that guidance, we'll need to do an exercise to assess how long, depending on that criteria, we will need to carry out those surveys.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, it's regarding the parking on pavements. For example, if we have a pavement that is a wide pavement and we currently have cars or vans or whatever parking on that pavement, and then we decide that that's one of the roads that we're not going to allow that from this point on. I'll use an example down Lock Street. There's quite a number of cars that park on the pavement because it's a wide pavement. Would it be a foreseeable for us as a council then to say, well, wait a minute, we still need those property owners or tenants still need to park their vehicle somewhere? Do we then put ourselves in a position that we've got to make the pavement narrower and put in parking bays along the side of the road, that type of thing, to accommodate the traffic or the parked cars?
Cool.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Convener. I think in advance of seeing the guidance, it's difficult to really know exactly what that's likely to be, but there have been discussion in the pavement parking group that if there is a clear width of 1.5 metres, it may be possible for a vehicle then to park out with that 1.5, but there's still a piece of work to be done for us to be able to assess how would we enforce that 1.5, how would people know that they're parked out with the 1.5. So we are hoping, we fed back those queries, and we're hoping to get back some clarity on that.
Okay, John. Yeah, okay, thanks, Gail. Innes?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about this because there are so many roads in Inverclyde where if people didn't park on the pavement, it would just cause obstruction that 2 lanes of traffic couldn't park. I can think of Auckmead Road as an example, you know, and other places in Braeside where if people don't park, nothing can get by because the roads are so narrow. So I'd be very concerned that people are just going to get fined, you know, for doing what they've been doing for years to try and allow traffic to flow through areas in Inverclyde. So I hope that a real study will be done and things will be put in place to stop people getting fined, just for allowing things to keep going as it's been going for years, basically.
Yeah, thanks, Innes. John?
Thank you, Convener. Conversely to what Councillor McElhinney had mentioned there about the broad pavements and where we have quite a broad road as well, there are a number of areas such as Athol Terrace, Minerva Terrace, Route Raven, Robin Road, where the road itself is only broad enough for one vehicle, and the people who reside there tend to park up on the pavement, fully on the pavement. Now, should there be no exemption, we have the issue of people who cannot park outside their house because they cannot park on the pavement. They cannot park on the road because they're blocking the road. So yes, I do have great concerns. There's also the issue where there's double parking and where we have delivery vehicles. We would end up those drivers, if they cannot park on the pavement to allow the free flow of traffic, they then run the risk of A, being charged because they're parking on the pavement, or B, because they are blocking the free flow of traffic. Again, how would we address that? It's just other areas that I have concerns, especially the delivery driver's side, because if they cannot park on the pavement and then block the road, we may find that areas may become no delivery areas because of these issues.
Thanks, John. Do we get a response to that? I think we've all got concerns over this particular paper.
I think that as we get more detail, it will become clearer and we'll be able to have a elected members briefing session on it, and that would probably be the appropriate time to look at the detail of it, because at the moment we don't have that guidance, so we don't have the detail of what will be contained within that legislation.
Yeah, okay. Okay, can we agree what's proposed in the report? Okay, great. Sorry, Steve, you want to come in there? Sorry,
I'll just say before we start running hairs on this and all that, if anybody's got any complaints, don't make them to the council, forward them to Stuart McMillan MSP and ask him to deal with the complaints.
Right, thanks for that, Stephen. Okay, item number 11 is the public convenience update report. Martin.
Thank you, Convener. This is simply a report updating members on a couple of requests made at the last committee about extending the opening hours of town centre toilets in Greenock and Port Glasgow during the summer. So there's a recommendation to extend the hours to 8 p.m. between April and September, and also confirming the funding of the increased cost of public convenience provision being contained from within the Directorate budget. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Any questions on that? Chris?
Thank you. Just with respect to the times whether it's going to be closed, going to be open between April and September, just for clarification, is it inclusive of April and September, so the 1st of April to the 30th of September, or is it effectively at the end of April to the beginning of September, just for clarification?
No, the intention was the full months of April and September.
Okay. Okay. Can we agree recommendations? Yeah, thank you. Okay, item number 12, the Spaces for People update, the cycle lane monitoring results. Gail?
Thank you, convener. Yes, members will recall that the council were awarded Spaces for People funding to install a cycle lane from Battery Park to Lair Street to support active travel during the pandemic and to support the recovery period. This type of infrastructure supports the council's net zero ambitions. Monitoring has been carried out in the cycle lane usage and the results are contained within 4.11. Traffic monitoring was also carried out, and this has been carried out on 2 occasions. The results are contained in 4.13 and 4.14, and the results show a reduction in queuing from 2019 to 2021. But in addition, the vehicle volume surveys show an increase in vehicle numbers, which represents the stay-at-home message and the reduced number of people that were using public transport. An additional survey has been carried out within the last few weeks, and the results are contained within an addendum which was issued earlier today. There are 2 amendments within that addendum in the table, and they are highlighted yellow, but I'm aware that if people have it printed out, they wouldn't see the yellow. So to detail that, the dates said 2022, we've changed that to 2021 to reflect that actually the first lot survey detail was carried out pre-Christmas and not in the future, and that upon review of all the results, officers have noted that there was 5 occasions of queues on the Friday peak, not 4 that had originally been identified to us by the consultant. In following the implementation of the cycle lane, feedback was received from users and people within that were in the vicinity of the cycle lane, and a number of measures were undertaken, and that was detailed in 4.10. And I would just like to advise members that monitoring is continued and any further amendments will be undertaken as identified, and any details that are inspected will be rectified by the team. It's requested that further monitoring is carried out during the summer period when it's anticipated that the better weather increases cycle usage, which we would anticipate due to seasonal nature. And in addition, with works being undertaken at West Blackhall Street, it's proposed to pause any review of the section between Grey Place and Lair Street until following the completion of those works. I'd just also like to draw attention to the fact that when we've seen the queuing reduce, we have installed the MOVA system, and at the members' briefing session, we went into some detail of what the MOVA system means, but that has shown a reduction in the queuing because it has improved the way that the traffic signals speak to each other. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Gail. Jim? Sorry, I think Jim was first, maybe wrong. Jim, there you come.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I'm sure, like myself, the majority of members have spoken to their constituents, spoke to cyclists, etc., looked at the feedback on social media, etc., and the absolute pounding that the council's getting over the cycle track. Now, adding that, along with the recent changes to the highway code, which basically allows cyclists carte blanche to ride in the middle of the road at their leisure, for want of a better description. I think that there is no need for the cycle lane. Inverclyde's built on a series of hills. Any casual cyclist would put their bike on the back of their vehicle and they would drive to a safe location, whether that be the Battery Park, whatever, or an approved cycle route, and they would go along that particular way. They're not going to cycle from their hilly house down unless they're keen cyclists, keen amateur cyclists. The real serious guys are never going to use a cycle lane anyway. They're going to be going in packs, 6, 8 to 10, 12 at a time on the road. So I'm of a view to put forward a proposal that we just don't bother delaying this decision for another 6 months. Make the decision now, and we bring the cycle lane experiment to an end, and we remove it. I'd like to move that container.
Okay, Chris, you want to come? Oh, sorry, Graham, you no. Sorry, Graham, I'm keeping going to Graham. I'm really sorry, Graham, I need to come.
Thanks very much, Convener. I won't make any comments on being ignored. Yeah, we have obviously a number of statistics on the table. Constituents are finding it really difficult, Convener, to believe in statistics that we have before us. The statistics available about how flat the earth is, and we have proof that the earth is flat. But I'm sure you and I don't believe the statistics that the Flat Earth Society put forward. So there's a challenge out there about the monitoring system that we have, the reports that we've tabled, and they are in public. And it's already been said, and I've got a note later on, 190 people this morning have responded to the Green Telegraph social media page where it talks about the 10,996 people per annum who use a cycle lane. That's the figure that they're laughing at. 190 people are literally laughing on the Green Telegraph social media and saying that is not the usage that they are seeing of the temporary cycle lane. Convener, we've had a temporary cycle lane on the A770 for 247 days. Now, I know it seems like a lifetime, but it's only 247 days that the cycle lane has been there. In those 247 days, I've been out of town 11. So I'm going to base my statistics on 236 days. The days that I've lived and I've lived experience of walking or driving on the A770. So on those 236 days, 2 of those days I have seen cyclists, 4 cyclists in total. Out of those days, 236 days, I've saw hundreds of motor vehicles being impeded by the temporary cycle lane that is in place. Convener, it's very clear from constituents that the cycle lane was never requested, it's not wanted, and it's not needed. Officers have informed me that the number of complaints that they are receiving has reduced. When I asked the constituents who have spoken to me why they've stopped speaking to officers, the question, the answer they've given me is the question to officers was, when will the cycle lane be removed? Officers are simply not answering that question. So constituents are sick of asking the same question over and over again. So Convener, I'll let a motion on the table, and I'm not sure if it's an amendment or a motion, but I'm going to call it a motion, and I'll let legal change it if it was, that in page 148 of our papers, would delete the recommendations D, E and F, and we insert a new recommendation D, and that reads, the committee agrees to remove the temporary cycle lane on the A770 brackets, Elgin Street, Grey Place and Dunumpley Street, close brackets, with all work to be completed by the 31st of May 2022. I have a copy of that motion for legal if required. I can pass it down. Thank you, Convener.
Anyone else? That's me, Linda.
Well, I suppose I might as well. I think there's a few comments here. I don't know how far and how broad I should try and unpack the comments of that's been made so far in this meeting. I think members know that I'm an advocate back to travel, but I also own a car. I also walk, use public transport, use the train. It's safe to do so. It's safe to get back post-COVID. And in all those things, I think every aspect of that should be provided for, with an options provided for people to be able to travel in the way they want. It's not a case for saying that there's never anybody on the cycle path, because certainly when I've been cycling along it, I've noted when I cycled along it since September, I passed 10 cyclists going the other way to me, and when I cycled back, there was another 12 cyclists, I think it was, if I remember right. So cyclists are using it. What there is a case if you're in a short duration, if you're in a car and you're going past it, you might not see the cyclist, because there's less cyclists on using the cycle path than using the adjacent road. But you have to have a consistent approach to encouraging people to change their behaviours from being in the car to using cycling lanes, and it takes time for that to develop. We can't just say, let's start now, and then 6 months later to take it away. Nobody's going to change their what you call the way they travel, and we need to. I know there's been a kickback on the cycle lane along Brougham Street in particular. I think that's where we sort of concentrate the comments from the general population, which are obviously well expressed in Facebook. But when you actually sort of unpick a lot of it, you have to sort of say, well, actually, if you were looking at it and you were saying, well, actually, is there traffic delays now? Well, actually, whenever I've seen it, there isn't as many traffic delays as there was. There was issues right at the very beginning of it, and I certainly, from one person who promotes that travel, I think it was a mistake at the start not to have the white lines changed and not to have the MOVA system in. But I think I'd like to have some specific questions for officers, but I think we just need to be careful on what we imagine these cycle lanes are to do. I think Jim McElhinney said, well, cyclists now have carte blanche to cycle in the middle of the road. That is not the case, Jim. Cyclists now have the highway code allows cyclists to go into the middle of the road when it's safe to do so to ensure their own safety. That's the sort of thing you do when you're going along beside traffic islands, etc. Where if you don't do that, your car will try to squeeze in beside you. So that's why that's done. It's not that cyclists should be using the lane all the time. It's just the fact that that's what we do, but it's safe to do so. And I'll turn back to Jim's comment on it then. What's Jim saying? Well, we don't need to provide cycle lanes because cyclists should use the road. Well, say at the moment there's not very few cyclists using the road, but say if the cyclists double, treble, quadruple the number of cyclists using the road, basically Jim's wanting cyclists to effectively take over the car space and then utilise that, and the traffic jams will be nowhere near what they are now. They'll be a lot worse. So this is why you have to provide facilities for cyclists on the main arterial routes to enable both cars, cyclists, pedestrians, public transport, all to share that publicly available space. Now, I'll go back to what I said at the start. There has been mistakes made in this. We all know there's been mistakes made. We have to learn from them. But I don't think we should be taking a knee-jerk reaction to this and doing it now before an election because it's popular or what have you. I think we need to have this to what they call to bed in. I'm not a great proponent of what's been provided there at the moment in Brougham Street. I think it needs to be improved. I think the officers have admitted that within the paper here. They're proposing improvements, and I think we just need to just take a step, see how it goes, and look at it and be rational how it's done. I was very looking at the numbers. I was very impressed about how it shows how the MOVA system has actually improved traffic flows through the area. From what I can see from the system, I'm only going by the statistics and the systems that's there. I think there's a perception that you've got to be very careful in feeding into your own biases in these things. You've got to look at the facts and what are the facts telling you. The facts are telling us the earth is round. The facts are also telling us there's less, what they call it, traffic delay on that route than was before the MOVA system was put on. Now, that would have happened anyway. If the cycle lane wasn't there, the MOVA system had been there, there's been less traffic delay. And that's also the fact there's less traffic delay, but there's also more cars than the previous surveys. So we've got to say, well, actually, has the cycle lane had an impact on car usage there? With the white line that's there now and the traffic signs, no, it hasn't. Can it be better? Yes, it can. Should we be making sure that we're providing great facilities? Definitely. But I don't think we're at the point we should be removing this temporary cycle lane when it's only had effectively 6 months to bed in. We should look to see how it goes on further. So let's see. Well, let's say the thing. If you want to try and encourage people to use things, you need to have them there for a period of time. I always use the analogy. If you looked at the M6 motorway, the M6 motorway's got hundreds of thousands of cars using it now per day. If you were to look at the M6 motorway at the start of Preston, there wasn't hundreds of thousands of cars using it per day. But when you build facilities over time, people start to use them. In the case of the car, there's a negative environmental impact. In the case of the bike, it wouldn't have that negative environmental impact.
So you've got to go. I know you're muttering to the side there, but you've got to take the thing on and say, what are we saying if we rip these things up? Are we really thinking the future of travel in Inverclyde is everybody in a car? It isn't. You've got to give people options. And the options for me as a cyclist, 6'2" guy, to be able to take the lane and going along 20 miles an hour on the road, is completely different from a woman of 60 or from a kid of 16 trying to get to and from school or trying to do from things. We have to provide facilities that are suitable for all ages, all types, and all people. And it's not just that. So what I would suggest, though, I'm not going to, I know I don't have another amendment here, so I don't think it's really necessary. What I would suggest is, as I say, I think we have to look at what's been provided so far and on what information we're getting, and we have to bring people along with us, because there is, and James pointed out, there's a lot of perception out there that the cycle has not been used, and to be fair, I don't think it's been used as well as it could be because it's not been completed. But let's have a look to see now. All the recommendations that are in the paper today, you can look and see that what I would suggest is at F it says notes that further minor amendments may be deployed to improve the cycle lanes deployment. What I would suggest maybe add on at the end here, because I think it's important that we get reports back on this, because we need to see how this has been developed. We need to as officers, we need to have a close, as councillors, we need to have a close eye on this. I do think we do need to have a close eye going forward, because there is the negative public opinion about it out there. But I would suggest, as we say, at the end of F, and further report on improvements to be provided to a future committee at the end of that, because I think we need to keep a close eye on this as elected members. We know there's a strong and vocal section of the public against this cycling, but we have to look at it and say, well, if we want to meet our environmental targets, we need to provide facilities that enable people to change how they can travel. Now, I'm probably the only one here today that actually cycled in here to come to this committee. It took me 10 minutes from Port Glasgow to Greenock. It was actually faster than public transport. So it is a viable option in Inverclyde. If you provide facilities, people will be able to use them.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Drew,
Thank you, convener. Yeah, thanks to Councillor Curley there for highlighting the issues with this cycle track, both negative and positive. I actually live on the cycle track, the new part at Hilden Street, and to get out of my driveway, I've got to cross the cycle track. And I disagree with those who are saying that it's not getting used, because I see this getting used on a very regular basis, and I see it getting used by parents with young kids, particularly the connection between the Battery Park and the Esplanade Park. Ideally, you'd want this to be extended from Gourock to Port Glasgow, but even better, from Western Ferries through into the connecting network onto Glasgow in a manageable way, certainly along the front. My own partner, she got a bike for her birthday only a fortnight ago, and she's not used it yet, but she has every intention. And if I was to turn and say we're getting rid of the cycle track right now, there would be hell to pay within the house. I think the officers here are asking for 6 months further to assess it, and I think if we get rid of this now, it would be absolute folly. I think we've got to carry on with it and improve the situation, extend it, and get it working, because I think it will attract people to leave the car and to cycle, but they've got to do it in a safe environment. And I would be all for the officer recommendations of continuing with the assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Anyone else want to come in? No. Okay. Jim, you want to talk us through the process?
Thank you, Chair. I think we have a motion and 3 amendments as I have it. The original motion was by Councillor McElhaney, which was to bring the experiment to an end and remove the cycle lane. The first amendment was by Councillor Brooks, and that was as he read out. so that delete recommendations D, E and F and insert a new recommendation D. Agree to remove the temporary cycle lane on the A770 Elton Street, Grey Place and Dalrymple Street, with all work to be completed by 31st May 2022. The next amendment by
Jim, can I just bring in Jim McElhinney? Just want to kind of come in just for a second. Jim, you want to
I'm happy to withdraw and align myself with Councillor Brooks.
Yeah,
That helps.
that's what I'm going to say. Yeah, okay, thanks.
in which case Councillor Brooks becomes the motion. The first amendment, therefore, is by Councillor Curley, which is as per recommendation, but with the addition at 3.1f of the words and further reports on improvements to be provided to this committee. I think that's how I have noted that correct. And the final amendment I have, second amendment is by Councillor Mackenzie, which is to move the recommendations as per the report. Is that correct, Councillor Mackenzie?
I'll align myself with Councillor Curley's. His addition to point F is very sensible.
So move the recommendations.
Convener?
Yeah, you come, Jim.
Can I ask what your view is with regard to Councillor Curley's amendment?
Yeah, I've not got a problem with Chris is suggesting and adding the section at the end, so I'm quite happy with that.
Okay.
So it's at the end of the motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I have it then, Councillor Mackenzie's position is identical to that of Councillor Curley. Do you agree, Councillor Mackenzie? You are 100% on the same wording as Councillor Curley?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
In which case, will your amendment fall and we'll be left with Councillor Curley's alone?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So, the motion is by Councillor Brooks to delete recommendations D, E and F and insert a new D. Do you wish me to read it again, anyone?
No, I think we know.
Thank you.
Please.
Okay.
D is agree to remove the temporary cycle lane on the A770 Eldon Street, Grey Place and Dalrymple Street, with all work to be completed by 31st May 2022. So that is the motion. And the amendment is as per page 148 of your printed papers. The recommendation is there with the addition of the words at the end of note F, further reports on improvements to be provided to this committee. The roll call. Councillor Alfeld, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, motion or amendment?
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Clockerty, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Crowther, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Curley, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor McCormick, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Jim McElhinney, motion or amendment?
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Thank you. The amendment is carried by 9 votes to 2, so that the recommendation F is altered as per the text, which I have read out on several occasions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah. Okay, moving on to item number 13. It's a path agreement between Nimsby Council and Peel Land and Property for the construction of the NCN 75 shared path through East India and Victoria Harbours. Dale?
Thank you, Convener. This is quite a short report and it's setting out a request to enter the path agreement with the landowners to allow the completion of the NCN 75 between Beacon Arts Centre and the EE Contact Centre entrance. The path agreement details are contained within the report in item 4.3, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Neil. Jim, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's just regarding the length of term, 15 to 25 years. Peel either own the land or lease the land, and if I take it, correct me if I'm wrong, this could be part of the 100-year pound a year lease. So surely as a reciprocal, then if you're looking for a similar length of period for this particular lease, so I would be saying be looking to get up to 100 years rather than this 15 to 25.
Okay. What's the rationale, Gail, with the time frame on this?
This is the anticipated length of time that the landowner is likely to wish to enter the path agreement for. I may be best to ask for confirmation from any legal colleagues. I don't know whether Jim can give a bit more detail on that.
Okay, Jim.
Sadly not. Mr. MacDonald, who's your usual legal advisor, is the person who is the file holder so far as this transaction is concerned, and I know absolutely nothing about it. I wish I could assist you with this, but I don't want to misrepresent the position.
Stuart, want to help out with this?
Sorry, I can't.
No. Okay. John Crowther, John, you want Jim? Jim, okay, you come back in first.
Yeah, the reason why I'm kind of emphasising this is that to me, it should be free access to the waterfront for residents and visitors to Inverclyde. We shouldn't be beholden to anyone, whether it be 15 or 25 years time to turn and say, by the way, we're now putting a padlock on that path, and if you need to go a wee detour, you can walk along the front up until this point, but then it's our land and you're not going to go any further. So I think it's really important that we try and remain free access to the members of the public. I don't know if there's some bylaw or whatever that allows people to cross people's land as long as they're not doing any damage or they're just traversing the land. So I think I'm kind of reluctant to accept all these recommendations, but this one's the kind of sticking point. Would rather this one be continued or further legal advice sought, is to say that we should be pushing for the free access and the maximum amount of period of lease. If they have a 100-year lease on that particular land, then surely the reciprocal should come back to us.
John Crowther.
Thank you, convener. I'm going to go down a similar vein from that of.
I think you've just seen yourself, John.
You sure?
That's okay.
John, I think you're on mute.
That's fine, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. It's really just to get down a similar vein as Councillor McElhaney. Where it states there, 2.3, the face of the route passes through East India and Victoria Harbours, which are owned by Peel Land and Property, Greenock Harbours Limited, and requires a path agreement between the council and the landowner. The various title deeds, as you'll be aware, that cover East India and Victoria Harbour, such as REN 126174, clearly states that Riverside Inverclyde Property Holdings Limited leased this valuable public asset to a private commercial company, Peel Land and Property Greenock Harbours Limited, for a period of 125 years for £1 per annum if asked. Peel Land and Property Greenock Harbours Limited are the tenants, they are not the landowners, apart from the small parcel of land in front of Victoria Harbour which they do own. Now, to lead from that, I am aware that Inverclyde Council transferred this land at the Regeneration Committee meeting on the 17th of January 2008 to Riverside Inverclyde Property Holdings Limited. This wasn't a private session. Why the secrecy? And what were the terms of the transfer? Did it place any burdens on Riverside Inverclyde property holdings which forbade them from transferring this valuable public asset to a third party? Councillors actually deserve to know this, and arguably so do the residents of Inverclyde. Effectively, Inverclyde Council gave this land away. Is there any mechanism that we can bring it back into council ownership without having to wait a further period of 125 years? Thank you.
Stuart, right, come on
Through you, convener, I was simply going to say that there was a typographical error in 2.3, which Councillor Crowther has spotted, and it is a leased by Peel Land and Property. Convener, it wasn't my intention to go into the level of detail which Councillor Crowther sought. Convener, with your indulgence, we're happy to continue this item to seek further clarity in respect of the duration of the lease, as Councillor McElhaney has pointed out, and we'll bring a further report back.
Okay. Where would we be without you, John? Jim,
thank you.
Yeah, that's just.
No, Michael, I'm okay. If it's going to be continued, there's no use to prolong.
Right. Okay.
Just okay,
we're quite happy with that, yeah. Sorry,
I'm happy for it to be continued. As something brought up before, I'm looking at the plan on page 160, and I note the opinions of members with respect to the transfer of land, and obviously it's still a very important subject for a lot of people in Inverclyde because of the transfer, effective transfer into a private company. But just in a little bit of detail, I've discussed this with officers before at previous briefings, where it shows this path going in front of the Scots Dry Dock. I think I've raised the issue. There's 3 lanes in the roundabout at that point. One's been painted out and has been since it's been constructed. Obviously, I'm just trying to say if we can actually see if we maybe engage with Transport Scotland during the design process to see if we can actually move that path out a little bit. And no, Graham's maybe going to get a bit worried here about taking a little bit of the road there, because that might save a little bit of the ground around Scots Dry Dock, which may help future development in that area as well.
Convener, I would suggest that that's beyond the realms of this report. Happy to take Councillor Curley's comments on board.
Yeah.
We'll investigate further, but with regards to the release of this land, I've stated we're happy to continue this and report back to members.
Okay, we have to continue the report. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, item number 14 is the Property Assets Management Report, the public section of the report. Eddie.
Yeah, thanks, convener. The report covers a single item dealing with public consultation on proposals for use of an area of open space in connection with potential extension of the post office and Park Farm in Port Glasgow. There were no formal representations received, but only 2 requests for additional information from local residents, which officers responded to. The committee is therefore requested to provide a decision in respect of whether to further consider the terms of a proposed sale or withdraw from the negotiations. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Eddie. Any questions on this?
Move item B.
Sorry?
Item B, I'm happy to move item B. Is there any problem?
Say that again, sorry?
The recommendation is item A or item B, so I'm happy to go for item B.
Yes. Okay. Put me confused there, man.
It's just to negotiate the sale.
It's either withdraw or negotiate the sale, but I'm saying I'll have to go for private papers, which will be negotiated the sale.
Okay. Anybody otherwise minded? No. Okay, we agree that. Thanks very much. Okay, the rest of the meeting is to be held